Welcome to the Arizona Flight Training Workgroup meeting. This is just a group of volunteers that get together every 2 months to discuss any safety trends, issues with the airspace that we all share. It is a leaderless group, although I will be talking through this as kind of the moderator for the meeting. There is no leader to this organization. We've actually had different volunteers lead different meetings. But the format for the meeting will basically be, we do have a couple big broad topics that have been brought up by different individuals that we will discuss. But in general, we go over airspace issues, airport issues, and other training issues. So feel free to, at the end of the meeting or as we're bringing up topics, if you have a question, you can just raise your hand, which I believe is a function on here. Yes, you can raise your hand inside. I'm not a super Zoom fanatic, so but if in Zoom, you can raise your hand. And Jim, if you want to monitor that for me, because I have a small screen on my little iPad here, so that would be helpful if somebody can monitor for questions and raised hands. But do raise your hand. We'll take them in the order in which their hand is raised. But let's see what else. So we do have a website for those who are new and aren't sure what this group is or how to find information that we're going to be talking about. Most of it, if not all of it, is going to be on the Arizona Flight Training Workgroup website, which is AFTW.org. So please check that out. Second website you should all be familiar with, if you are not already, highly encourage you to go there, and that is FAAsafety.gov, which is a great site that you can see what's currently going on in the FAA safety team, and it gives you access to seminars and will auto update you if there's new seminars in your area, which is a great way to learn about events such as this and help you participate in the safety of your national airspace system. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. And just first off, I guess there's a couple other housekeeping issues I should probably mention, and that is if you do have a question, post it in the chat too is another option. And instead of raising your hand, and then we can get to it near when we get to it. If you have like a name, if you want to make sure your name is being presented on the Zoom, I believe there's a way you can go in there and edit your name instead of just a phone number or some weird ID that you might have. That way you can ensure that we get credit for Wings credit. But
I'll look good right now. We do have a Bob with no last name. And
okay.
Other than that, and we have a Sarah with no last name. So it'd be good if you guys can edit your names, make sure we get that. Craig, are you taking attendance? We'll plan on Craig doing attendance. Thank you.
Yeah, I got it.
And
thanks.
For Wings credit, do you want that sent to you, Jim, or?
Actually, are you the best person for that, Craig, or who's taking care of that for the Wings?
Well, I can do it. It's going to be easiest if they register on the spans as well, because then I've already got it. But yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. So yeah, if you do want Wings credit, just make sure that you're registered on the site, and that if you want to send an email to Craig, I think it's craig.tompkins@faa.gov. Correct me if I'm wrong, Craig.
Affirmative.
Cool. Alrighty. So we'll go ahead and jump into the first topic on our agenda, and that is an airspace issue. We're just updating people on the recommended procedures for practice instrument approaches in the Phoenix area project. We haven't had a lot done in the last time since our previous meeting, and Jim has posted a document on the website or in the chat function, which you can use to go right to the document we're talking about. But this is a document that's been put together by, I don't believe it's just Jim, but a group of people. And we're looking to get feedback. If you have suggestions for any of the approaches described in the document, let us know. I'm not sure if anybody has any comments since last meeting and wants to discuss anything here.
No, I'll go ahead and just let everyone know. Well, thank you for everyone's patience. There's really hasn't been much done since the last couple meetings. Most of our progress was when most of us took the month of April off and stayed home, and we made a whole bunch of progress. Really got the project going, and I've still been expecting check ride demand to slow down, and that has not really happened yet for me. So there hasn't been a lot of free time. So if we have anyone that has some discretionary time, especially if you're an instrument flight instructor familiar with approaches around town, we'd love to get a couple of people to help proofread and start editing and trimming down what we've got, and so we can get a usable document. That'd be great. But I posted the link to the working document and the link for the AFTW contact page where you can provide feedback.
Great. Yeah, and I've looked through the document. I think it's a really helpful document for those instructors who are looking to figure out, where can I do approaches? What are some of the things I need to think about before doing approaches in certain areas around Phoenix and Arizona. I think most of this is just around Phoenix, though. I don't know if there's other folks from like the Tucson area or maybe up near Prescott area want to throw in any 2 cents on those approaches in the extremities of the state.
Yeah, we're certainly open to that. Right now, it's labeled approaches in the Phoenix area. So depending how broad we want to consider the Phoenix area, and we can certainly expand it or have separate documents in the future for sure.
Yeah. So I know a lot of the Phoenix area do travel up to Prescott to shoot approaches, or sometimes down to Tucson. So may be good to kind of wrap all that into this.
Definitely.
Okay. Any other comments on that topic?
I'm good.
Okay, I guess we'll go to our favorite topic, which that is Stanfield stack, Stanfield VOR procedures. We've had some reports still. People, I was actually listening to the frequency a couple days ago and heard somebody report Maricopa Highway inbound. So please make sure that you are using correct reporting points. Maricopa Highway, a lot of people may not know where that is, especially if they're from out of state or not familiar with the highways. So 2 nautical miles south of, or 2 nautical mile out on final, I think is the call for that instead. Correct me if I'm wrong. But
I think we're doing 4 miles and 2 miles. Yeah, I heard Maricopa Highway as recently as about 2.5 hours ago.
Is it 4?
Yeah.
I haven't flown the approach in a long time, so
that's okay. Yeah, no, it's not a big deal. It's just like Brent said, not everyone knows where Maricopa Highway is. So.
Yep. So just watch for that. If you haven't checked out the PowerPoint in a while, it's probably good to refresh your memory. It's on the website. We're also looking for any clear directions that anybody has, ideas for working with IFR traffic in the Stanfield area. We were trying to get a small work group together for this project. The issue is that we'll have VFR people practicing instrument approaches and in the stack, and then all of a sudden a person under an actual IFR clearance being vectored into the stack basically by Tracon or center will be basically dropped into the stack, and it makes it a bit of a swarm of confusion when somebody suddenly shows up, and there's a balancing act that has to happen there with the VFR aircraft trying to adapt and the IFR aircraft trying to follow their clearance amongst the hornet's nest of training aircraft. So if you're interested in participating in that work group, if you wouldn't mind going on to aftw.org and just go to the contact us page and then send us an email and we'll put you on the work group for that. That would be my suggestion. Any updates from Larry Taylor on this topic?
I don't think Larry made it today.
I don't think he's here.
So okay. Yeah, he's a DP that offered or accepted the assignment to kind of take the lead on it, but I have not talked to him about it recently. So
cool. All right. Alrighty. We'll move on to the next topic unless there's further questions.
I have a question. My name's Jeff. I check in with PHI or medical, and for the DPE specifically. So if you guys do instrument approaches through Casa Grande, when you're on a FAA check ride, do you skip the stack? And usually it's not a big deal for us because we don't have to go down there. But when Gateway and Chandler are opposite direction, occasionally we'll go down that side. And so do you cut on the bottom of the stack, or do you wait at the top, or how do you, is there a plan?
No, we actually have very clear direction that we play by the same rules as everyone else. So we'll start at the top of the stack and follow everybody down, even when it's a check ride.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good question. What are you guys flying, Jeff?
We're flying the A-Stars out here,
Nice.
A350. So doing the 135 rides down south. Like I said, we don't usually go down there very often, but occasionally it's once in a while. So
it's a good place to avoid when you can.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's a long flight for us too. So it ends up making a check ride an hour and a half.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And we did have a kind of an exception, I guess you could say. We had some helicopters, I believe they were from like Quantum and the folks that are flying like the little R-22s,
right,
that had trouble getting up to altitude to, fly by the stack procedures. So we suggested they hang out below the stack, 2,500, 3,000 feet or something of that nature, and wait for an opportunity or their turn to shoot the approach. And they can kind of pop to that altitude and then fly it in. But a lot of them are having trouble climbing to the higher altitudes of, 5,000 or so.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys being on board with the procedures. It helps everybody.
Yeah. Okay. And then Jim, I might turn this one over to you because I'm not super familiar with this procedure, but do you want to talk about the publish hold issue, SitBlue and a GPS 2.5 at Deer Valley?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thanks.
In fact, well, I don't have it ready to pull up, so I'll just, there's really not a lot to report other than there's been some concerns about whether we should, as the AFTW, whether we should help standardize people being on the practice area frequency or being with Phoenix approach. The GPS 2.5 left approach to Deer Valley is outside the Bravo, so there's no legal requirement to talk to Phoenix approach. When the pilots choose to talk to Phoenix approach, Phoenix treats it like a real IFR approach with an approach clearance and everything. And there's pros and cons both ways. I mean, I could share my opinions, but I just think it would be good to have some standardization and keep us all on the same frequency. For now, I'm not volunteering to take the lead on this one. But if we have a couple people that are familiar with that approach that would like to step up, again, go to the AFTW website, the contact form, shoot us a note. It's not a big project. We just need someone to see it through, get, Phoenix approach in the loop, talk to maybe a couple chief flight instructors at the big schools, just kind of get some, feedback, and let's see if we can put something together as the AFTW. There'd be a recommended procedure. The biggest concerns, other than being on the same frequency, there's a significant challenge with the IFR traffic in and out of Scottsdale. And when we're talking to Phoenix and we have to hold when we didn't want to, or they tell us the approach is unable, it's usually because of IFR traffic in and out of Scottsdale. So at the very least, it'd be nice to have a simple document with a few recommended procedures and some information like that, so that people who come from out of town, new to the flight schools, they can read this document and be like, oh, okay, that's why this is important. You can't just, basically doing that approach is like walking across a highway. So you need to be aware of what's going on with all that IFR traffic in and out of Scottsdale.
Sure.
I don't know if Matt's on today from Tracon. I didn't see him, but yeah, if he comes in, we might get him to chime in on that too.
Is there any
Jim,
current procedure? Yeah, I can hear you.
Tony?
Okay. Hey, Jim. I've had a significant concern around that particular thing and been on the phone with Tracon a little bit about it as well. And it is about the IFR traffic coming in through Scottsdale that they're mainly concerned about, and especially with our flight school that comes up through here. So I'd definitely be more than willing to talk with you about that and maybe take the lead on that.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you, Tony. Yeah, you guys are one of the biggest players there. So that's AeroGuard out of Deer Valley. So, all right, thank you.
Hey, Jim, this is Craig. I got something to throw in if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say the last time I did speak with Matt, he indicated that there's a huge uptick in IFR traffic going into Scottsdale. I guess it's the balance to the Sky Harbor traffic being lower.
That makes sense. I can tell you, I've seen it myself just out doing check rides. It is it is getting a little bit ridiculous how difficult it is to get things done at Scottsdale. And so it's, yeah, we've definitely seen an increase.
Okay. Alrighty, and one of the question on that topic, Jim, before we move on, is there already a kind of a procedure spelled out, a brief one for your practice approach procedures document?
That one I don't know off the top of my head. Let me go look. If there is, it wasn't written by me. But
okay.
We did have 3 or 4 guys that helped with this project. So go ahead and keep going. I'll see what I can
Okay,
find.
no worries. Okay, so the next topics are really going into airport issues. So it's actually an airport airspace issue, and this is the PowerPoint. Jim, if you want to bring that up to get that on the screen.
Did you email that?
Yeah. Did it not come through?
I am not seeing it.
Craig, if you can throw it up on the screen.
Never mind. Hold on.
I was going to say, I got it right here.
You ready to go? You should be able to share your screen, Brent. Craig.
Stand by.
Okay, and I guess while you bring that up, I'll kind of launch the backstory of this. So last meeting, I believe, or the meeting before that, we started discussing that there's quite a bit of traffic going on at Coolidge, just as much as Casa Grande, and there's been a lot of folks doing kind of, let's just call it a copycat stack procedure at Rocco. And so we were thinking that it would probably be good to put together more formal stack procedures over at Coolidge, because we're starting to see that really actually become the case, that you see a stack over at Coolidge now. And so a couple of us from 3 different flight schools got together and kind of drafted some ideas as far as a procedure at Coolidge. So this is, as you see, it's kind of a copy of Casa Grande's procedures, but we've been editing it and moving it towards its own standalone document, and only about halfway through. And this is just a draft. This is not by any means how things will work. Of course, this is all suggestion, but the idea is that we can better inform pilots of the dangers and things to be thinking about when shooting the approaches over at Coolidge, and ensuring that there's a standardized process for the stack there at Rocco. So if you can go to the next slide, we'll go through the first couple slides pretty quickly. Just talks about the 2 different approaches, mainly GPS 2.3 and VOR 5. So far, we've only got this PowerPoint done up to the end of VOR 5 there. We haven't worked on the radio calls, so that's still to be done. If you can go to the next slide. And next slide. So you guys are all familiar with Coolidge and where it is. So this is just showing where Coolidge is on the different charts. So you can go through these next 3 slides pretty quickly, Craig. And there's a sectional chart and the terminal chart. And, there is some key takeaways with Coolidge, and that is there is parachute drop zone on the east side of the airport. The drop zone in the chart supplement is up to 15 nautical mile radius, happens day or night. So do be mindful of that, but there is 2 practice approaches into the airport from opposite directions. So if you can go to the next slide, Craig. Next slide. And I'll get back to this in just a second, but the stack, be thinking, and I don't know if we've had any decision on this or if anybody has any input, but it looks like I'm trying to figure out how high can a stack be to not be interfering with like jet traffic into Sky Harbor or other places. And it looks like Sky Harbor is going to be way up there at like 8,000 to 10,000 feet. And, but I'm worried about the approach traffic going into Gateway, the final approach for ILS 30 Center. I looked at the approach plate and it looks like traffic is directed to be at 6,000 to 5,000 feet near this vicinity. So I wasn't sure. Maybe we want to just stop the stack at 6 or something like that. But it's pretty rare people shoot that whole approach. Is there a question?
Hi there. My name's Randy. I used to do approaches into Gateway. I definitely agree with you that I've the couple times I've done the ILS 30 into Gateway, very rarely has it been anywhere near Coolidge. It's always they vectored me on the north side, northwest of that restricted area, at least from my experience.
Yeah, and most of the jet traffic, it looks like they get vectored in, well away from that area. From what I've seen, I do have the ability to kind of review some radar track data, and I'll look to do that between now and the next meeting to see if we see a lot of jet traffic coming over that vicinity and what altitudes they're at. But that's a thought that we're still considering here. So don't take this slide as final, but we are thinking about, how high can the stack be before it gets kind of unsafe and interferes with something else. So for right now, that's what the slide looks like, but we'll adapt it as we do more research. All right, next slide. So here's really the big overview. This is kind of the big picture. You've got the VOR5 approach coming from the left side of the screen there towards Coolidge. And you got the waypoints of Wardy and Ziki. Stanfield and Ziki are the initial approach fixes for that approach. And you've got another approach to the GPS 23 coming from Rocco. And I think some of the big risks that we're trying to identify or mitigate here is that we don't want people starting at the initial approach fix at Stanfield without being aware of Stanfield procedures, of course. And so that would make a Ziki the initial approach fix. We've seen a lot of people trying to join up at a Ziki, and there's usually a lot of practice area traffic hanging out around Coolidge and doing maneuvers, ground reference stuff. There's always traffic in that vicinity, and it's pretty congested. So we already have this initial approach fix at Rocco with a procedure turn. Our thought was that we could deconflict a lot of issues with, the Stanfield initial approach fix and then Ziki procedure turns there by standardizing and doing just a vectors to final here for VOR5. So I know a lot of people do that already, where you've got your student and you're setting them up for a vectors to final onto that 071 radial, and then they fly the approach from whatever vector you intercept that approach on. And we're kind of thinking that might be the best way to go and use this VOR5 approach to practice a vectors to final type join rather than do a procedure turn. Of course, that's only going to really work if you're approaching from a side where that is possible. So we'd recommend doing like a vectors to final and joining somewhere between Wardy and Ziki. If you're first in line for that approach, that you would obviously shoot for reaching a Ziki. But if you're second in line, you might want to try joining the 071 radial at Wardy or further outside from that, so as not to interfere with the aircraft in front of you and give you plenty of room. The other approach on the GPS 23, that's where we think, it's pretty open airspace over there and not a lot of traffic. And so that's where we feel a stack would be best practiced for holding in procedure turn type practice. So we also see a lot of crews that will do like the precision approach at Casa Grande, go missed, join the 071 as a vectors to final and shoot the VOR approach into 5. And then go missed and head to Rocco and shoot a GPS, and they can knock out 3 different approaches using 3 different systems, all in a span of about 30 minutes, hopefully, if everything pans out pretty well. But that's what we've typically seen from the training community, but we just didn't want to have 3 holds. We didn't want to have a stack at Stanfield VOR, a stack at a Ziki, and a stack at Rocco. So to try and avoid that, we were just recommending that people do a vectors to final at for the VOR5 approach. I don't know what you guys think of that.
Hey, Brent, I got a comment on that real quick.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we necessarily need to add this to the procedures because the DPs should already know this, but one that I think is easy to miss for an instrument check ride because it's hiding in the appendix of the instrument ACS. I just pulled it up on page A16, where it says the applicant must accomplish at least 2 non-precision approaches in simulated or actual weather conditions. And then there's 3 bullets. And the first bullet says 1 must include a procedure turn, or in the case of a GPS approach, a terminal arrival area TAA procedure. In other words, out of the two, if only two non-precision approaches are done on an instrument check ride, at least one of them needs to be the full approach starting at an initial approach fix. And if an examiner does two vectors to final on two different approaches, that does not meet the requirements for an instrument check ride. So during training, it's not a big deal. 141 grad check, follow whatever's in your TCO. But when you're prepping someone for a check ride, it just makes sure they know at least one non-precision approach has to start at an initial approach fix.
What was that question that just came up?
Am I supposed to be watching the chat?
The question says, what is the purpose of that triangle-shaped piece of airspace surrounding Sacaton Peak and north of Wardy?
Nobody fought
Echo.
for Echo airspace there. I don't know.
No, it's probably because that's the Sacaton Ridge, and you're going to have a hard time getting radar coverage right there.
All right.
Not
Is
sure.
this a stump the DP question?
Yeah, that's what it was. No, that's what I've always thought when people ask me that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're shooting two approaches and you want to do them both at Coolidge, if you did a vector to final for VOR 5, but then did your procedure turn at the Rocco GPS 2.3, you would meet the criteria you just spelled out, correct, Jim?
Yeah, Brent, that's what we use.
Yeah, as long as you do at least the full procedure for at least one of the non-precision approaches. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'll continue moving through here. If you have any feedback on this presentation, guys, don't hesitate to send us comments. You can just do that through the AFTW website. If not able to address them here, through the contact page. But let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Next slide. All right, so here's showing both procedures kind of overlaid there, one in green, one in blue near the bottom, and just their start altitudes. So VOR 5's at 35, which is another thing we were thinking about, because we know a lot of practice area traffic, and the practice area likes to hang out about 4 or 5, 5 in the summer, or 6 when it gets really hot and being in the colder air. So having a vector to final and not having a stack starting at 3.5 and going up into the Coolidge area was seen as a benefit. But anyway, just be cognizant of the different altitudes there. So you got 4,000 would be the lowest holding altitude for Rocco, basically. So moving to the next slide. And next slide. So this is the GPS 2.3, just the approach procedure as it's published. When you look at this, do keep in mind that 2 nautical mile from Suppy at 2340. Keep that in your mind here as we move forward through this. So next slide. This is just showing where the stack is at Rocco. And next slide. And usable altitudes. So 4 or 5 would be the lowest altitude to hold, and 4,000 is basically the altitude at which you're shooting the approach. And we'd be 500-foot increments above 4 or 5. So 4 or 5, or somebody shooting the approach at 4, you'd have another person holding at 4 or 5, another aircraft at 5, awaiting their turn. Next slide. And I think this is just describing the stack procedures, which is basically a carryover from the Stanfield procedures. Go to the next slide, please. And this is just about, hey, if you're doing holds only, please stay at the higher altitudes and don't take up the slots lower in the stack that are trying to shoot the full procedure. Next slide. So the GPS 2.3, talking about the published MISS procedure there, the recommended procedure that we thought through was that when you get to that 2 nautical mile from Suppy, don't descend below 2340. If runway 5 is in use, then you're going to want to execute that MISS approach procedure, or if you're wanting to go missed, basically make a right turn to join a left crosswind for runway 5's traffic pattern, and then kind of filter through the traffic if you want to depart the area or whatever, or if you want to join the VFR pattern and shoot some landings or whatever you want to do. But if 2.3 is in use, then of course you could land the approach, but if you're wanting to go around or go missed, then you could fly the published approach procedure, but just beware if you start that early. Make sure you're not deviating into that parachute drop zone area. Stay to the on center line or stay over center line as best you can. And then for runway 1735 is in use, then make sure to climb, above traffic pattern altitude as soon as possible. That way you try and avoid crossing the downwind for 1735 at 2600. Okay, and of course, communicate.
Question on that. I'm not as familiar with this approach, Brent. I don't get it out there too often. Is the purpose of that 2340 suggestion to deconflict the VFR traffic pattern traffic?
Yeah. So
what's the normal TPA there?
Normal TPA, I believe, is
2600.
2600.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're already lower than that.
2600.
Yeah. So by staying at 23, you got to remember, if you're joining a long final, you're going to be seeing traffic, much lower than that, probably around, I don't know, like the 1800, 1900 mark. So if we say stay at altitude until you've identified, where you're fitting into the VFR pattern mix, that would be prudent.
Gotcha.
All right. Any questions here? Further questions? Okay, moving forward. This is the other VOR 5 procedures. So this is just the excerpt from the published procedure. And as you can see there, Wardy and Ziki. Wardy's just outside the depicted procedure hold there. Now, the other thing to really, if you haven't shot this approach before, one of the big factors that's affecting safety of the airport, and really the traffic pattern at Coolidge, is that when people shoot this approach, people don't realize how much of an angle the final approach is off of the runway heading. So, we'll go to the next slide, and we'll highlight that here as we move forward. But there's 2 initial approach fixes at the Ziki hold, or the Stanfield VOR. And we know the Ziki hold does kind of sit in the middle of the southeast practice area, sort of loosely stated words there, but it is a very busy practice area. So we felt it best not to have a stack there. Move next slide, please. So our idea for wanting to join this approach is, don't use a Ziki hold if you wanted to do procedure turns. Instead, do vectors to final for this approach. Initial aircraft enters the approach using vectors to final and trying to join at least 2 miles from a Ziki, or worst case scenario at a Ziki, but it'd be better to join before. And then subsequent traffic joining a procedure behind other traffic that have already announced their number 1 would be to head to Wardy and join there. Of course, you're going to coordinate and communicate just like we do at other airports. And if you're just coordinate with other aircraft in front of you, I don't think there's anything else specific here. If you do need to break off your approach, though, so if your student is really having trouble with the approach and you want to come back and try it again, you'd basically break off. Now, the missed approach on the procedure is a left turn. We said, if you're on final or not, if you're still on the approach, let's say you're just inside a Ziki or something, to break off to the right might take you away from the busy congested practice area near Coolidge, but that does take you closer to parachute drop zone to the south at Eloy. So not sure which would be the best option, but we were just thinking to break off maybe a right turn, and that way you're in the same direction as the procedure turn if it were actually occurring, and then head back and rejoin at Wardy. That way you're behind any traffic behind you, or you're joining behind other traffic that was behind you. And then, before you go visual, make sure you're coordinating with VFR traffic. Expect to enter that base you're really kind of joining the pattern at the downwind to base turn. You're not really on a base to final position on that airport. And I'll show you what I mean here on the next slide, please. So this is what it looks like if you're on the final approach course approaching the airport. I've made a red line over the runway. And as you can see, you're coming in at quite a different angle than what most people would expect to approach a final approach course. The runway at the very bottom left of the screen there, that's, what is it called? Sarita Airport. Yeah. And so you pass just south of that as you're flying on this approach. But this is the picture from Sarita. So next slide. This is what it looks like if you're on downwind, kind of looking at maybe your 11 o'clock if you're on downwind for runway left traffic runway 5. this is what you might be looking at. So imagine somebody on downwind, they're looking for somebody that's calling like a 2 or 3 mile final on the VOR 5 approach. And you can see the differences in where they should be looking. This is one of the biggest hazards we've seen at the airport, and people nearly colliding on the downwind to base turn. So this is really to highlight this danger, not only the pilots that are flying the procedure, but also people in the practice area who may be just in the pattern at Coolidge and not thinking about the differences in the approach vector to the airport. So they do need to look more at their 1 o'clock or so for final approach traffic than you would expect.
That's a great graphic, Brent. That's awesome. We should frame that and hang it in some flight schools.
Right. Yeah, maybe I can get a frame and we can hang it in like the porta potty at Coolidge, I'm sure.
There you go. That's where everybody will see it.
Yeah. All right. But again, this is just estimated depictions, depending on how accurate people's VOR systems or what navigation techniques they're using on final. This is going to vary, of course. But and I believe this is about as far as we've gotten. If you want to go to the next slide, I think we talk about the missed approaches here. Yeah, missed approach for VOR 5.
Brent, keep in mind, talking about not just accuracy but the ACS allows up to 3/4 scale deflection, and you're far enough from that VOR, it could be pretty far either direction and still be within standards. So
yeah.
Hey, Brent, one question, or there's one question in the chat.
Sure, Stacy.
Or actually a statement. It's really long, so whoever typed it, do you want to talk about your statement here?
What's the question on this slide?
I think it's in general about Coolidge.
I was looking in the chart supplement and I noticed about that parachute jump area.
Yes.
It lists a different frequency for the center than what we see on the instrument approach procedures for Coolidge, which is interesting. The IAPs, you contact Albuquerque on 125.4, but for parachute jumping, it's 125.25.
That's interesting.
That's on page 452 of the chart supplement, if you want to look at that.
Yeah, we'll look at that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Brent, if you put in the notes that we want to get that clarified, I'll call Albuquerque and talk to him about it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Stacy. All right.
It could be as simple as altitude, and the jump planes are at the higher altitudes, talking to one center frequency, and we're looking at the bottom ones. But that'd be good to find out.
Yeah, I'll get it clarified.
Okay. So for this missed approach procedure, you could use the published missed approach, which is a climbing left turn to a Ziki, but do watch out for pattern traffic. What we recommend, resuming your vectors to rejoin the final approach course outside of a Ziki. And then if no other approach traffic, you can rejoin, outside of Wardy, right here. The approach is being used by another aircraft. Yeah, so if your second in line is Wardy is where we recommend joining. So first aircraft would head to Ziki, second aircraft plan to join at Wardy. And then just use caution for, be careful of that VFR pattern traffic as I explained, and then on a approach course as soon as practical, communicate with the aircraft. So I believe this is as far as we've gotten so far in developing this procedure document. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Good work. Thanks for taking the lead on that project. I know, on the surface it seems easy. Oh, we'll just copy what we're doing at Stanfield, but there's enough unique things that it's a lot of work.
There's quite a lot of different stuff at play. So, but if you are, if you want to join that work group, by all means, shoot us a message. We'd be happy to get you on there, and we'll continue developing the communication procedures as our next step. Which
I think Lee has a question.
We're probably going to have a copycat of TFD's procedures for communication. Go ahead.
Question. We ran into this working on the Marana Regional instrument approach. When a person descends down to the 2340 versus the MDA, what about logging the approach?
Yeah, and I'm totally fine with, it's basically I wish the other two folks were here. We don't. I believe the reason for that holding at that altitude was to try and make sure that there's a place for you in the VFR pattern before you just dive into the airport. But assuming that you've already coordinated with traffic in the pattern, there's no conflict, that you can descend down to MDA if you need to get the approach shot and logged and want to do the full thing.
And on check rides as well, it's we're supposed to do everything as real life as possible.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe
we can revisit that 23.
Yeah, maybe goal. Just word it, something like if your mission allows, if your lesson allows, kind of thing. Because when students are just practicing with instructors, whether they drop down or whether they simulate a call like you're clear for the approach except maintain such and such altitude, and it doesn't really deter from the training. But that is a good point, Lee. I think the advisory, I don't remember the number, but there is it was actually a safety bulletin or a safety notice, something the FAA wrote letter of clarification a few years ago, where they talked about logging instrument approaches in simulated conditions and going all the way to the MDA or the DH. So
yeah, we'll readdress that with the team and see what the exact reasoning behind that was. Maybe I'm not understanding something.
Brent, Jim.
Leveling off higher is much safer.
Yeah. Go ahead, Stacy.
We have Scott that has a question. He wants to talk.
Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, hey, everybody. Sorry I was late. And I actually wanted to wait till Brent was over. This is a related item to our meeting, but I just have minutes because sadly I'm about to run the Boeing monthly safety meeting. So
go ahead.
Is it okay if I go right now, Brent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I would ask with the most emphasis as I could possibly give that we ask our flight instructors at the schools, especially the UNDs and the CAEs out in the East Valley, to not jump to those other frequencies they use to chit chat. Sometimes they call them fingers and they go 123.45 or 123.4. Believe it or not, those frequencies are quote unquote owned by Boeing Flight Test. And nearly every day this week during Chinook flight testing, instructors have been chit chatting and talking over the flight testing, which isn't always a life or death thing, but it could be a huge safety issue when we're trying to communicate between the telemetry room. I know this isn't a Scott problem. I'm doing this on behalf of all my Boeing pilots. But could you guys please help spread the word that even though you think like, hey, let's randomly go to 124.285, somebody may own that in the East Valley. There's so many frequencies. And I learned later in life when I started flight testing that the frequency allocation and the way that works is darn near every frequency is truly taken.
Yeah, by multiple people sometimes.
Absolutely. They're not really idle out there just to grab to chat. So I've got to jump, and I thank you so much, Brent, for letting me jump in. But if you guys could do that for me, I can report back to the folks at the safety meeting that I brought it up, and hopefully I can bring it up at the DPAG and stuff like that too.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, guys. Great presentation, Brent, by the way.
Okay.
Brent, Randy has a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
Hi there. I was just looking through ForeFlight for the comments and looking through the AFD and stuff. Maybe this is something to add to our PowerPoint here. But what is the favored runway for Coolidge? I was always under the impression it was 2-3 just because it's out of the way a little bit, but maybe with anyone who has more experience than me can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I probably am not the best person to answer that question, but I know the book answer is whatever runway. The runway in use is.
It might be, okay, call them airport manager. I don't know. It might be worth to make a decision on that in this PowerPoint. I know that might be a stretch, but maybe it might be a good idea to select that. And my kind of follow-up question that I was originally going to ask was, this might go back to stack, and I got to review the stack procedures, but how do we determine how much of a kind of a tailwind or a crosswind would the stack procedures allow? Because I know we set up for the ILS 5 there, or the stack does, but how much of a crosswind or how much of a tailwind is usually allowed? And it might be more of a flight school question, but just kind of what's the thought on that?
I'm pretty sure we addressed that for Stanfield. I think the current procedures say that runway 5 is the preferred runway up to a 10 knot tailwind.
Yeah.
So we'll take a pretty stiff tailwind and keep using 5.
Yeah, the reason for that, it was the only location to do ILS is if runway 5 is in use. So we try to stay on runway 5 as much as possible because otherwise you're pretty much out of luck if Gateway is not using 3.0. So that was the reason for really kind of allowing a larger margin for people to shoot 5. At Coolidge, I don't know, it's a VOR and a GPS, and you could do a GPS and a VOR in a couple different places. So I don't know that there's a real need to say there is a designated, this is the runway you're more likely going to use up to a certain tailwind or whatever. I would just probably adapt what the chart supplement says is the calm wind runway, but I don't know that there is one at Coolidge. And I agree, 2.3 is going to have you flying over less people's houses. So maybe better if the winds are calm to shoot 2.3, but it just depends. Because if I'm coming into Coolidge at night, you're going to be black hole effect like crazy on 2.3 and 5. You might have better visuals to land in. So I think it's really up to the PIC. Just needs to determine which runway is going to be the safest approach and what the other pattern traffic needs are. So, but for us right now, we haven't identified which would be preferred.
Yeah, that's a good question. Some to think about, but I agree. I think you nailed it, Brent. And the fact that I think most flight training airplanes have IFR GPS now, so they could do 5 or 2.3 and probably still get their lesson done. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Randy.
And Carrie had a question.
Yeah.
But Carrie, I think the answer is UND, CAE, and ATP are probably the biggest users of Papa 08.
Yeah, and we do have reps from CAE, ATP, and UND on the committee right now that are building that procedure.
Quick question. Kerry Grant said, from my Air Force days using Coolidge, we were on runway 23 95% of the time. And he also asked which flight schools are the heavy users at Coolidge, and it's pretty much probably UND and CAE, probably the biggest ones down there, just from these.
And ATP also.
And ATP.
That's right.
Yeah.
Gateway.
Yeah.
I do see helicopter users in that airport quite a bit, though, too. I think Boeing may be down there with some stuff, and I think there's the military traffic from, I think, Pinal or Marana, what's a Stagecoach and stuff. I think that one of their routes is to come up to Coolidge and shoot whatever, do landings there or something like that. So there's usually a lot of helicopter operations there as well.
Good stuff. Good progress.
Okay. So next on the agenda, let's talk about AVQ.
Oh, real quick. I did look, our rough draft of the instrument approach procedures for GPS 2.5 left, and we do have a comment or two in there about getting on with Phoenix approach. So
okay.
Either myself and Tony, or if I can find another volunteer to work with him on that, we'll just use that as the place to get those procedures nailed down and work with Phoenix approach, and we'll make sure it's in that document. So
cool. All right. Thank you. So, Lee, do you want to present this topic up at KAVQ? I know you're kind of the headmaster of this.
Thank you. Yes, I have a few things about AVQ. First of all, Sarah, Brian, and I made a video which has been posted on your Facebook page, and I asked if you'd share it on your website, about safety at non-towered airports. And we are working on a new one, which includes aerobatic practice areas. Jim Ward, a Tucson pilot, wrote a great paper that we'll be including in the show more for now. And our second video is going to be more generic, and we'll offer fast team reps the PowerPoint so you can fine tune it for your own locations anywhere in the country. Now, we've worked on the template, your template for our practice instrument approach procedures for Moran, and we do not have a consensus. We've got Brian Stamper, Rick Whitaker, and Don Evans from Tucson here now. We really could use some help. We narrowed it down to 6 options, and we can't come to a consensus, and we'd appreciate your input.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen that, Leah, we are working to try and get that stuff on the AFTW website. I know the webmasters have just been busy with other things at the moment, but I'm sure they'll get it up there shortly. And for those on the call who haven't checked that information out, like I said, it should be on the website soon. But if you do want to read through the content, you can email Lee or AFTW, and we can email you those docs out back to you. So just go to contact AFTW website and just fill out the little form there and send, hey, can you send me the documents for AVQ, and we can send it to you. But
Thank you.
yeah, I thought the video was interesting. The paper on the aerobatic areas was eye-opening. I think that's a big topic that a lot of people don't really put a lot of emphasis on, and a lot of people don't think it's a special use airspace, so to speak, that isn't getting mentioned in any of the training materials. So that's very good. I really think that was very timely and helpful. So
thanks. Yeah, I'm great. And Carrie just said that the video is also on the ASAG website.
Great. Okay,
and I just posted
website
in the chat as well.
Cool.
It looks like one big link, but the first 2 lines what I just posted in the chat is one YouTube link, and then there's a tiny URL there as well for anyone who's on the live meeting.
Got it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wonder, and it's been a little while since I looked at those 6 items or 6 possibilities. Is it the kind of thing where we have to come to a consensus, or could we just leave it at, here's the concerns? I mean, I know we like to have standardized procedures, but at the end of the day, all these are is recommendations. Mm-hmm. Every PIC is still responsible for following the rules and doing their thing. So I wonder if maybe it's such a complex situation that, at least to keep things moving forward and to have something, published, maybe it should just be, hey, here's the concerns, here's the things to watch out for. Do your best, Mr. PIC.
Good luck.
Right? Because you're right. Yeah. It's so complex. You're never going to make everybody happy.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And one option was to decommission the approach. So, but for instance, leveling off at 3,000 instead of going down to the MDA keeps you out of the pattern, and you can't log it, but it could be safest someday, and it could allow you to do the procedure in that regard. So I agree. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. It's like everything in life, and especially in aviation, you don't know what you don't know. And part of I think one of the biggest points of value from these recommended procedures is we bring things to people's attention. So now they know, oh, there's parachute jumping. Oh, there's helicopters. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that. And then they can decide, you know what, maybe we should not be sending students to Marana anymore or on their solo cross countries, Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Any other comments for Lee and the team down in Tucson? Okay. Okay, so a couple other plugs as we finish off the meeting here. Don't forget, nominations are still open for just a couple more days here. It's going to close on November 30th for the GA Awards. So if you want to go to generalaviationawards.com and you can fill out the nomination packet there. Let's see, there's the Fast Team Representative of the Year, the CFI of the Year, Mechanic of the Year, and there's also at ASAG's website, correct me if I'm wrong, there is Airport of the Year and Controller of the Year. Is there another one I'm forgetting? I don't think so. I think that's it. But but it really does help to recognize folks in your working areas that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. If they've done tremendous for the improvements of safety around your airport, or for you personally, then I absolutely nominate them. It's always good to recognize those in and around us that have really made a difference. So I would highly encourage you to nominate somebody. Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Carey, let me add a little bit to that. The ATC Controller of the Year does not need to be just a single controller. It is ATC Communicator of the Year. And a couple years ago, we had an entire team win that. So it doesn't have to be a single controller.
Oh, okay, cool.
Nominations for those two, the ATC Communicator and the Airport of the Year, do not go to the General Aviation Awards Committee. They stay local here, and we'll accept those up till the 15th of December. So that 30 November deadline is only for the Fast Team, the CFI, and the Maintenance Technician of the Year.
Okay.
And let me add one more thing about the banquet this year. Because of the COVID and the other restrictions, the banquet is not going to be an actual sit-down dinner as we've had in the past. We're going to do it virtually, so we can honor all the recipients for this year. And it'll be an online event. We're still going to have the silent auction and door prizes for that. It will be on the originally scheduled date of January, I believe it's January 23rd, which is a Saturday. So we'll still go ahead with the presentation and the awards and the trophies. But as far as having a dinner event, we're not capable of doing it because of the COVID restrictions.
Hopefully you'll have record attendance. Is there still going to be a fee to raise money?
Well, the main way we're going to raise money is through the silent auction and the door prizes.
Okay, so anyone will be able to attend the Zoom meeting?
Absolutely. So,
very good.
And if it's anything like our other meetings that we've had for AFTW, we're getting participants from around the country. So we're actually getting better participation virtually than we are in person.
I'm planning to never drive to another meeting again.
Yeah. The only problem is I can't get the free food anymore.
I know, right?
Now, let me, as long as I got the floor for a second, Scott Tinsan was working on getting a second frequency for the practice area. And as far as I know, he's still working on that for the South practice area. So he unfortunately had to go before he could give us an update on that.
Yeah.
But
we know it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yep. We're trying to get that. And if anybody can do it, the Boeing people with their connections might be able to get it for us. The other thing I've got for the website, for AFTW's website, we've got a secure certificate for you. It's still showing unsecured when you log on to the website. So I think John Macetic was supposed to update that. Stacy, I don't know if you got any hand in updating the website, but maybe John's just a little bit swamped.
John's the one to talk to. He has been buried. And you know, a lot happens behind the scenes to keep this little AFTW thing running. And I promise everyone is getting more than they're paying for. Yeah. But when you say that you have a secure certificate for us, are you saying that ASAG paid for it? Because that's like $100 a year, right?
That is correct, and that's where our ASAG funds that we raise from the banquet go to supporting both the ASAG website and AFTW's website. So,
well, thank you, ASAG. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
we have zero budget here at the AFTW.
And one other thing for the AFTW website, it's not so much for AFTW, but for the ForeFlight overlay. I think Stacy said he'd get on this. I noticed when I was down at Casa Grande and I zoomed in, I get this big red circle, and I thought I'd violated a TFR, and actually it's just a parachute jump circle. And so my suggestion was to make those things a little bit different from a TFR representation.
Polka dot.
Yeah, that was why I was raising my hand to try to be able to tell everybody that I'm going to be changing the color of that because of that.
Good point.
That's all I got.
Cool.
Cool.
Brent, were you skipping the training updates on purpose?
I was leaving the best for last. No.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know why.
I know how proud you are of getting these meetings done a lot quicker than I was ever able to. But,
no, I like to be shifting things around, keeping it on their toes. So I guess we'll move to training updates next. And Jim, you want to talk about your website?
Sure. Well, not my website, but first I'm actually going to mention the logging the instrument time for commercial. That's been covered in the past. I think everyone's on the same page with that. Go back and watch previous meeting videos or read the minutes to see what we're talking about there. But for Part 61, commercial initial applicants, the instrument time that's required by Part 61 needs to be documented properly. The very long-term solution, it's going to take years to get it done, but we're still hoping to find a volunteer within the AFTW that would be willing to take the lead on submitting a proposal to the FAA. Basically, we just want it to say officially in the regs that the training listed in 61-129A1, which is the instrument training for a commercial, is not required when the applicant holds an instrument rating issued under this part. If the FAA would just add that one sentence in Part 61, it would certainly make everything a lot more clear. And basically, that's the way it's been treated for years, but that's not what it says. We assumed that was the original intent, but that's not what it says, so we got to do what it says. This is just a call for a volunteer to take the lead on that. And then Brent was nice enough to give me the floor to talk a little bit about a topic that has come to the forefront for me. In fact, let me see if I can share. Let's see. I'm going to drop a link. This is what I call my instrument check ride notes. And here we go. You guys are seeing my desktop now. So it's just a link that forwards to this Google Doc. And anyone who clicks on it right now will see little animal shapes come popping up right here. So as you can see, I made some updates on October 17th. And if you look at my little table of contents, one of the things is I updated the section on stabilized approaches. And I wanted to take this opportunity to give a little bit of training here for any flight instructors that are watching. For anyone that doesn't know, after deciding I was never going to be an airline pilot, I decided a few years ago to throw my hat in the ring, and I'm now a first officer at SkyWest. So I'm a career flight instructor, and I've been in the airlines as a pilot for 4.5 years now. And I can tell you from personal experience, stabilized approaches are an interesting topic in that, everyone remembers seeing the pictures of the Southwest 737 sitting at the gas station years ago. When they went off the end of the runway at Burbank, Midway, I think was the other one. I think there was another airline around the same time. And the FAA really jumped on stabilized approaches. What does that mean? To be stabilized, to get unstabilized, what should you do? And I can tell you from the airline side of things, the industry, it's taken a while, it's taken over a decade, but the attitude has really changed. And general aviation has a long ways to go. And those of us who are in the AFTW can do something to affect a change on that. So the main thing I'm talking about is in my opinion, my observation, and most of this is my opinions, but it seems that most general aviation pilots, there's a stigma related to doing go-arounds. And most of us, whether it's just implied or whatever, we tend to think that when we do a go-around, it's because we messed up. We didn't do a good enough job, and now bad pilot go-around. And we've got to change that attitude. I can tell you at the airlines, for the most part, they've achieved the goal. Doing a go-around as an airline pilot is basically a badge of honor. It's like high five, you did a go-around today, good job. And why'd you do a go-around? I wasn't stabilized. All right, good job. Cost a few minutes, passengers get to the gate a few minutes later, no big deal. And we need to bring that same attitude to general aviation. So this has been a passionate topic of mine for a while, but I didn't have a good reference for general aviation until our last DPE meeting. Someone happened to mention something in passing, and I found the reference I was looking for. It's AC 6198 Delta. And of all places, the FAA hit it in this 2018 document that is about currency, flight reviews, and instrument proficiency checks. And there's a whole section in here, let me just search it real quick, about stabilized approaches. And they actually give 7 criteria of what it means right here in pages 2-3 and 2-4 of what it means to have a stabilized approach. All right, I wanted to simplify it a little bit, so I broke that down to, get back here. I'm a pilot, so I made an acronym, PACC, the PAC acronym, Position, Airspeed, Configuration, Checklist / Briefings. I'm not saying this is the only way to teach it. I'm just putting this out there as something that I'm teaching to my own flight training clients. It's in my documents that applicants will read before they go on a check ride with me. It's consistent with everything in the advisory circular. It's just a little smaller package. And the other thing that I don't think is addressed well in general aviation is what to do when you're not stabilized. It's like, great, we know what it means to be stabilized. Well, at the airlines, if you get to a certain altitude and you're not stabilized, it is required by SOP to do a go around, do a missed approach. And I've never seen anything like that for general aviation until this advisory circular. They say 300 feet AGL. That doesn't always work. The airlines, you can paint it with a broad brush because everyone's doing instrument approaches. Even a visual approach is an instrument approach, right? But in general aviation, we have short field landings, we have power off 180s, we have all these different maneuvers. Saying that you're going to be aligned on center line, meeting all 7 of the FAA's stabilized criteria by 300 feet, that's not always going to be the case. So what I put in my notes is I said 300 feet AGL may or may not be the appropriate altitude based on the specific airplane, runway, and current conditions, but it is still important for pilots to select a minimum altitude at which they will decide to do a go-around if not stabilized. In other words, I'm recommending that should be part of every before landing briefing. It's like, hey, we're doing a power off 180. If I'm not stabilized by 50 feet, I'm doing a go around, whatever. Maybe actually power off 180 is not a good example. We don't do go arounds on that one. Different subject. But if I'm practicing a short pattern, I'm practicing a slip to land, whatever it is, it should be briefed and the pilot should know by a certain altitude, we're going to go around. Why is this so important? Maybe I should have started with that. The accident data is clear. We still have way too many accidents and fatalities in general aviation from loss of control during takeoffs and landings. Most of the landing accidents in general aviation are in one way, shape, or form related to not being stabilized. And pilots continuing the approach, trying to save the landing when they're not stabilized. So just wanted to throw this out there. You guys are welcome to copy and paste any of this, change it, whatever. The advisory circular link is there, and hopefully we can move the needle on this in the flight training environment and change the attitude that a go-around is somehow a failure, and get closer to what the airlines are doing, where it really is a badge of honor to make that good decision to go around. And that's all I had on that.
Can I chime in?
Please. Find my stop share button.
I just put 2 things in chat and they're confusing, and I apologize for that. I didn't mean to send that immediately, but I did want to mention that on Wednesday, November 18 at 10 p.m. Phoenix time, I'm going to be doing a presentation based on a CFIT incident. It's about pre-flight planning and preparation, how to prevent it from happening again. I put the link in there to the SPANS announcement, and right below that is a link to an NTSB report involving the turbo commander that met with Superstition Mountain in November of 2011. I've organized another presentation on that one as well, which I'll make available at some future date. Hopefully it'll be in a SPANS announcement that in a webinar that you can all join. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, and I strongly echo Jim's statement on the stabilized approach. Can't tell you how important that is, and how many times I see pilots mess up and say, if you just had listened to the stabilized approach criteria, that wouldn't have happened. Yep. So want to I guess we're at the point in the meeting now. I think, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're on open forum now. So if there is any other questions, comments, concerns from the community, now's your chance.
You should be able to unmute yourselves. Let me also see if anyone's raising their hand on the system. While everyone's thinking, as you say that, Brent, it makes me think of one other thing that I'm not sure how significant of a contributor this is to the lack of stabilized approaches, but talking to the instructor community, I think we need to be careful as flight instructors of the example we set, of course, but something as simple as the applicant decides, this isn't stabilized, I want to go around, and the instructor's like, oh, come on, it's good enough, go ahead, you can save it, or my controls, or because they know if they go around, the pattern's full. It's going to be another 20 minutes before they can land. You know what, guys? We got to be careful. It's if the pilot in command decides to go around, we need to honor that decision. And unless there's some other safety related issue, I just invite everyone to realize the value of giving them kudos for that decision versus that one time. You could talk to them for a year about how important it is to do go arounds, and that one time you're like, oh no, it's good enough, go ahead and land. You just blew all that training with that one bad example. So we gotta watch what we do. And
flip of that too, even if it's not the PIC calling for the go around, if your student's calling for a go around and you're like, what's going on? I always brief my flight crew when I'm coming in to land. If anybody sees anything unsafe, you just call go around. I mean, no questions asked. We're taking this plane around the pattern, and then you can fill me in on what you saw or what was going on.
Exactly.
So strongly suggest that angle as well.
Thank you. Well, I don't see any hands in Zoom. Anyone else want to unmute, say anything?
Hi, this is Gulf Sarah.
Hey, Gulf.
There you go.
How are things at Rio Verde?
Good. I've been running around here, but I've been listening to everything. I didn't miss any. Did you guys bring it up earlier at all?
We did not. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Overall, everything's going fairly well. I think we just have to remember with the cooler weather, there's going to be more traffic, and I've noticed kind of a trend where planes are flying a little bit lower. Mainly, my issue right now is just with privately owned aircraft below 1,000. And occasionally below 500. So I just, it's coming up on peak season. So I think we should all just remember that, how much, refer to Brent's slide that he made a couple of years ago and how much the terrain rises from the Verde River to the Troon area.
Yep. Yeah, for those who are unfamiliar with what Gulf's talking about, the Northeast practice area, Rio Verde community, moving westward from there. We see a lot of pilots fall into the trap of starting like a ground reference maneuver or some low altitude air work and working their way westbound at the same altitude, thinking the terrain is flat, when in actuality, it actually slopes up quite significantly. It just doesn't look that way from the air. And people will find themselves where they started at 1,000 feet, they're now at 300 feet by the time they finish the maneuver working westbound. So FAA also changed the charting over there, and it's now one of those yellow colored areas. So, we'd recommend treating that as an urban area and staying at least 1,000 feet minimum, but do be careful of the actual terrain slope there. And there's a document on AFTW's website if you want to check it out. There's some more guidance there.
Thank you.
Carrie,
yeah, thanks, Gul.
Yeah, thank you, Gul. The Carrie Grant posted CFI Forum 19th of November, 5 p.m. local. It's in the spans on FASafety.gov. You can go look it up. I'm pretty sure that's going to be via Zoom. So go do a search for CFI Forum on FASafety.gov.
Yeah, we use Microsoft Teams.
There you go, but still virtual.
And I have covered your topics, Jim, on previous ones. And I happen to be doing a IPC update for this, so I'll throw in your stabilized approach. It's also time to do the annual security training, TSA training. So if you need to do it, attend that, and we'll knock it out for the year.
Very good. All right.
One more thing, if nobody else has anything.
What?
Okay, it's kind of aviation related. I mean, I know I'm probably the only one here without an actual pilot certificate, but is there anybody using the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020? I guess that's no.
You're talking to pilots who are we're probably fans, we're probably enthusiastic, but we're just so busy with our day jobs that who has time to play with the cool new stuff. I can tell you, one of my friends, Carl, he does, you guys can check out YouTube, it's Fly with the Guys is his YouTube channel, and he did when it first came out, he did a pretty cool side-by-side video where he actually took his GoPro, did a lap in the pattern at Deer Valley, and in the real airplane and in Microsoft Flight Sim, and it is crazy how similar they look. So yeah, you can go find that video. It's kind of fun to look at. Other people have done similar things too. So
on my Christmas
amazing.
list,
right?
Yeah, it's truly amazing how realistic it is, and I've been flying around the Northeast practice area just to kind of get an idea of how things look out there. So, no,
so Galt, when are you going to let us turn you into a pilot? What are you waiting for? Come on.
Yeah, I've thought about it more and more, and I don't know why. My dad wanted me to be a pilot before I could drive a car. I always went up and flew with him, and we flew over to Healy Indian Reservation way back in the day and did all the ground reference maneuvers and everything you needed to do to get your private.
Nice. What kind of plane did he
have? He had a 152 and then a 172, and then we were building a Glass Air 3 until medical reasons forced him to sell that, basically, and I was just busy. But that was a great learning experience, actually building a plane.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
Well, it's in your blood.
Yes,
just a matter of time.
Yeah, and that's what my dad's saying, because another thing I've been sharing with him is I'm flying the Socata around the world in the flight simulator. So
nice.
He's saying the aviation is definitely in my blood. So yeah, I just need to find the time. I work too much, so, but it's definitely in my blood, and yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? So Jim, did you have something?
Well, I was going to tee up the next meeting for you.
Yeah, so was I.
We were hoping, when I say we, the designated examiners, we got a request to put this meeting on Tuesdays in the future, so that it's the same afternoon. Moving to afternoons was kind of one step, and then get it the same afternoon as the DP meeting, which is every month. Does anyone here, any of our regular attendees, have an issue with moving this meeting to Tuesdays? If speak now or forever hold your peace. Still continuing with Zoom, and so I don't want to steal all your thunder, Mr. Conductor Brent, but go ahead and announce the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, so the next meeting is going to tentatively be Tuesday, January 12th at 1 o'clock, and we'll see a spans come out about that for those who are tracking spans. The other ending point I would like to end this meeting with is to think about the risks that are coming forward over the next couple months as the cooler temperatures come in. So I think some topics of self-study perhaps, or something to address with your groups of students for those who are in large flight schools, carb heat for those flying carbureted aircraft, icing conditions and how do you detect that? What do you do to avoid them? What to do if you find yourself in icing conditions? VFR and IM is also always a big concern as we start to see clouds get low. So I always, every year, see incidents attributed to those kind of large topics. So just a heads up, they're coming. Be thinking about those topics. I don't know if anybody else has any other things, but that's what I would leave you with. And thank you guys for attending.
Thank you. Good job, Brent. Good meeting, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim, for your support.
Yep.
Hey, real quick, that little change that we made with the spans where you register on the Zoom and then it sends you the email, did that pretty much work okay for everybody? I only had a few emails with people that it didn't work for, and
I guess everyone who's here figured it out.
Well, yes, that is a true statement.
So
but that works out a lot better than trying to do all this flurry of emails at the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Craig and Ernie, and welcome aboard, Craig.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. We should announce that here, Craig. Go ahead and tell us what the official update is, what happened at the office.
Well, as of Monday, I guess, I'm the permanent FAST team project manager for the ops side. So it's the Craig and Ernie show now. Yeah,
there you go. There you go. So Tina is
He's our boss.
Basically, yeah, very good. So thank you. You're always so helpful, and you're always here. I didn't even think of making that official announcement, but instead of just pitching in, now you're officially here. So with the first team,
it's on me now.
Very good. We're happy to have you.
Happy.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, everybody. Jim, I'll finish making some other edits to the meeting minutes, and then I'll send you an email when it's done.
All right, sounds good. We'll get the video posted. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good one.
Thanks,
y'all.
Thanks.